We are back with you live once again on the only way to spend your Saturday here with us on Johnnie Torch Live. Johnnie Torch Live broadcast number 84 today, coming to you through the courtesy of the Adventures of Bullets Bourbon comics. Please check out the Adventures of Bullets Bourbon in the link in the description below to my website, where you will find the currently 4 issues in the series of the Adventures of Bullets Bourbon Private Eye. And I may be biased, but it is the greatest action-adventure series that the comic book industry has ever published in the history of comicdom. I might be a little biased, as I said, but frankly, I'm willing to take anybody up on that. All right, so how are you? How are you doing? This is a pretty hot Saturday afternoon here. I was going to say summer, but it's not summer yet. We're still in the Memorial Day weekend, which sort of signifies the beginning of summer, I suppose. Solo, a Star Wars story, came out yesterday, or technically 2 days ago. They do Thursday shows now. Gonna wait until I see it with my whole family, bringing my brother and sister and brother-in-law. We're all gonna go see it together, so I'm not gonna be seeing it this weekend. We are going to probably have I don't know if it's gonna be live. I don't know. It depends on how I feel about it, but I will be doing a review video come next Wednesday, which will be the day after I see it. And again, I'm trying to keep my expectations tempered. So far, it's gotten mixed reviews. Some people don't like it. A lot of people basically are just saying it's underwhelming, but they're not coming out in outright hatred of it. But, you know, after The Last Jedi, I don't think they can go any further. They can't sink any further into the mire of that abyss. But, you know, mediocrity will probably look pretty good compared to that. But, again, I am trying to go into this with enthusiasm, this film. And, you know, I'm not going to be blind to its faults. I kind of think I went easy on The Last Jedi originally. I haven't seen it a second time, so I'm curious as to see if it's as bad as it was originally, at least as I originally appraised it. But we will get onto that in our Wednesday broadcast. Today we're doing This Week in Comic Book Television, as we do every Saturday. We look back at all the television episodes that were related to comic book properties in the past week. Now, a lot of things have changed. I mean, I don't review Riverdale anymore, and I can't add Netflix series into this, but basically all the superhero shows. And we're down to 4 this week. Next week, it's going to be even briefer still of a show. We have Supergirl, I don't believe, will be concluded next week either. So I might be running the show with just Supergirl status. Cloak and Dagger is going to be out pretty soon, too, in June. That is going to debut. I don't think I'm going to cover that on a weekly basis, especially since it's going to be the only show I think that's going to be a superhero show. Season finale, I think, of Legion is coming up. And this week we bid farewell to The Flash and to Krypton. So as soon as Supergirl comes to a close, if Supergirl is the only show that's on, I'm probably just going to wait until the season ends and then just do the final 2 or 3 episodes in one review. Probably. We'll see what happens. But let's get on with it right now. As a matter of fact, let's start with Supergirl, and we'll get to the season finales shows a little bit later on. Alrighty. I couldn't get a good picture of this episode. And the few pictures they had to choose from were not particularly that interesting. And the episode itself wasn't particularly that interesting, I don't think. All right, so when we left off, Lena still can't cure Sam, but she's working on it. She builds an X-ray proof cage to keep Rain confined in when she's continually Rain now. She's not even morphing back to Sam. Kara doesn't like the fact that it's a X-ray proof cage. And again, the conflict between them two is building and building and building. And you can see Lena's probably going to have a heel turn. I was wondering if they actually were going to go through with it because, you know, the SJW effect on all the CW shows, but particularly Supergirl, you don't ever want to have the women at odds with each other. All women love each other. All women strengthen and empower each other. And so I didn't expect really them to go through with it. But they do seem to be building up a very strong case for Lena turning to the dark side because she doesn't trust Supergirl anymore, and she doesn't particularly feel friendship or kinship in any way with Supergirl anymore. And this is something that bothers Kara, apparently, but it's not something that I think will help if she tells her secret identity. I think Jimmy says something about that by the end of the episode. But let's get straight into this one now. Kara confronts Jimmy pretty early on about him confiding in Lena about the snooping job that she gave him. And she tells Jimmy that she doesn't trust Lena. Meanwhile, a new face here comes named Tanya. She gives Kara and Jimmy Koval's book. Now, we're still doing this whole thing with the crazy religious extremist, this Rao worshiper guy, strange guy that apparently is still at loose. I don't remember what happened to him earlier in the season. It's been so long now, but he's at large. And apparently this book will be used to make bombs for his cult members to cripple the city or what have you. Meanwhile, Ruby is not taking things well, which makes sense. She's only a kid and her mother is a super terrorist. Alex tries to get around her by acting, abnormally peppy, which, as you might expect, doesn't really make things any better. Supergirl and Mon-El are still investigating, even though Mon-El is married to a super hot chick from the future. I still don't know. I honestly think they should have either A, kept the Legion in the present and not sent them back, or they should have established, and keeping them here, they could have, had them work as a unit and not just the Mon-El Supergirl hour. Or they could have just had Mon-El leave at this point, because I really don't know what purpose he serves other than to, as usual, facilitate the shippers who are like, oh, I can't let go of this ship. It's such a wonderful relationship they have. But let's be honest, he's a married man. We don't want to see that kind of stuff going on between them. Kara deserves better than that. And, so does Saturn Girl. So, and it kind of also flies in the face of what Mon-El has grown to become, at this stage in his life. So, again, I don't really know where they're trying to go with this. The cult kidnaps Tanya, and the Guardian gives chase. He's finally Guardian all the time now, Jimmy. He's making up for the fact that they didn't put him in costume pretty much all along this season. I'm going to lower this fan a little bit. I still don't know if you can pick it up on the broadcast, but I've got a fan on over here. I'm going to lower it a little bit just in case it's making noise. All right, so James gets his mask shot off by what he calls an armor-piercing bullet. I guess that's, in National City, I almost said Metropolis. In National City, they have, some pretty sweet armaments there, I guess, because for these people, they get a hold of an armor-piercing bullet. And it shatters his helmet. The cops try to arrest him, but he gets away, and Tanya finds out that he's the Guardian and kind of gives him the whole hero worship speech. Meanwhile, Alex confides in Martian Manhunter, and they decide to take Jean's dad and Ruby to an arcade, which I wish I knew where these places still existed. I don't know. Ruby wants to leave because she's just not feeling it, and Jean's dad spazzes out as he's been wont to do, which is why you can't take him anywhere no more. Sad but true. Meanwhile, Supergirl tries to patch things up with Lena, but she's not too enthusiastic. The cult wants to blackmail James because now they know his secret identity, and they're going to go public with it. Mon-El tells Kara not to tell Lena the truth for her own sake. That's kind of what the secret identity is for, is to protect others. This was cute. They name-dropped Addis Ababa. Anybody remember Addis Ababa from the Donner film? That was cute. So the cult is trying to make a new world killer, apparently, with this book. It's not about bombs. It's about making a new world killer. They think they can use the info to reverse Sam's condition, so now that is something they really want. Jimmy wants to come out and admit that he's the Guardian. Then Jimmy tells this emotionally charged story where he was handcuffed at age 7 for playing hide and seek. I got a little bit of guff on the Twitter for mentioning how ridiculous the story is, and I said in my tweet that it's so ridiculous that it had to have been true. It had to have happened to somebody, the writer or somebody closely associated with the show. And I was told that in sort of a snarky fashion, I was told that Makad Brooks actually did live through that experience. And I was saying that the experience, of course, is ridiculous, meaning that it shouldn't happen to anybody in the civilized world, getting arrested at 7 years old. There's probably more to the story than that. I mean, cops are famous for trying to scare kids and stuff like that. So I honestly don't think that this cop handcuffed a 7-year-old Makad Brooks trying to, demean him or anything for being a 7-year-old black child playing hide and seek. It was probably more to scare, scared straight, one of those things where they're trying to instill in a kid, this is what you're going to do if you don't listen to the cops. Your life's going to be constantly being handcuffed and stuff. So again, I didn't really think that my reaction to this being sort of ridiculous was without merit, but, understandably, this is not the kind of thing that, we would applaud in a civilized society, putting handcuffs on 7-year-olds. Anyway, as is par for the course, though, for Supergirl, it's kind of a heavy-handed scene. And, Makad Brooks plays it well because obviously this is something that was, he lived through. It was a part of his life. So, understandably, he's very emotional telling the story. And, it's a good scene, but heavy-handed. It's well acted, but heavy-handed scene. He says that the Guardian allowed him to be himself and to feel free, have freedom. Whatever. Ruby finds out that Jean's dad is from Mars, and they start bonding and having fun, which was nice. It's one of those type, it's kind of like a trope where, the really young kid realizes that the really old guy is pretty cool. He's got some experience that, was fun to listen to and stuff. Of course, in this case, he's a Martian, which every kid would be interested in. But, usually it's more like, when I was a kid, we did this or whatever. But, obviously that's appealing to a kid that they're from Mars. And so they start having fun. Ruby comes out of her shell a little bit. Tanya goes back to the bad guys, and they capture her and Mon-El in disguise because, I don't know, he's playing this really strange, I don't know, character where he's a nerd that just ends up getting captured for some reason. I don't know. I didn't really catch why he was doing that, but they try to create their own world killer. Mon-El, Supergirl, and Guardian show up for a big battle, which is something I've been saying has been missing from the show for a while, and they are giving Supergirl big battles now. Supergirl, of course, talks Olivia down. Olivia, of course, is this actress that they cast basically because she can cry basically in an instant. She's very talented in that way, but she was a cult member from one of the earlier episodes, and she's trying to, I don't know, absorb some power. Her hand gets stuck to a power stone or something, and Supergirl talks her down and blasts the stone off her hand with a heat blast. So that was powerful. Jimmy tells Kara he'll go public when he feels the time is right, but now that his secret is safe, he is going to keep it safe and keep it quiet. But of course, the whole message that he was giving earlier on was he wants to inspire black children. He wants to be able to show that there are people that look like him. The black children have a hero that looks like them. Basically, what Black Panther was all about, I guess, right? Same thing, same difference. All right, so let's see. Alex and Ruby make up. She says she's worried about becoming like her mom. I would be more worried if I was her about her mom completely spazzing out and breaking out and destroying the world. But I think she says earlier in the episode she's going to crack the world in half. Rain, what is it about these world killers? The Sky, Daisy, they crack the world in half. I don't know. It's just too much danger for these world killers to be on the loose. Rain is getting immune to kryptonite, which is something I don't think can happen. I don't think you can get an immunity to kryptonite if you're radioactively poisoned by it, but I don't know. I guess maybe she's not a full-blooded Kryptonian. I don't know. It's confusing. Mon-El and Supergirl go after a space rock to cure Sam. John tells Mon-El not to mess with Supergirl. Basically, that what I've been saying all along. Don't get started with that. You're going to cause nothing but trouble. And apparently Korvac is back, as we've seen in the teaser at the end. Okay, so I am going to give this one 3.5 stars out of 5. Uh, it's mostly forgettable. Like I said, there's a big action scene at the end that maybe I was tempted to give it 4, but it really is basically just a middle of the road episode. I am going to say 3.5 stars out of 5 for Supergirl. And as I said on Twitter, I think all the shows this season, of all the CW shows, Arrow and Flash, Legends even, none of them have really hit the highs so far. I will say that I think Supergirl is better than last season. Thankfully, because they got rid of Maggie Sawyer and the focus was not completely on Alex and Maggie anymore. But it's still not really up to snuff. The second half of the first season is still the benchmark, and they haven't gotten back to that point yet. And it's kind of sad that they haven't. I don't know why it's so tough. They were digging in deep to some real good classic Superman type adventures. And again, I don't know. I don't know what went wrong at some point there. But okay, we're going to move on now to Krypton, which is another Superman-related series. This is about Seg-El, the granddaddy of Superman. And of course, we've also got the great-great-granddaddy of Superman there named Val. And we are going to take a look at this one. Okay, Brainiac attacks. Wasn't that the name of a Superman animated movie? I think it was. Brainiac attacks, and Lyda and Zod, General Zod, meet up with Nyssa and Seg. Jaina is still missing, and, you know, spoilers, this whole episode of spoilers, Jaina doesn't show up for the whole rest of the episode. So we're left with a very big cliffhanger, because she was a very big and enjoyable part of the show, Jaina. But last we saw, she was rescued from the tunnels from a blast injury that Lyda gave to her by what was apparently her missing brother that she hadn't seen in like 30 years or something. So Zod says they need to get Val from the fortress, and so they go to the fortress. Zod took Val's means of escape from the Phantom Zone in some kind of little rock device or whatever that small-shaped device he had. So they go back for Val in the Phantom Zone. Val has a reunion with Seg after they bring Val out of the Phantom Zone, which was nice. Meanwhile, Dev M has been given a robot arm, as has almost everybody in superhero lore at this point. I think there hasn't been a show that doesn't have somebody with a robot arm. Meanwhile, we get a brief glimpse of what's happened to Adam Strange. Adam is on Earth, and everybody but him, for some reason, is frozen. Because apparently in this version of the tale, Brainiac freezes everybody to the spot where they continue to be live, sentient for the rest of eternity, supposedly, but they're frozen to the spot. I don't like that. That's the one thing in this episode I didn't like, because you really do break the jeopardy now. Because apparently what Adam was trying to do was say that Brainiac needed to steal Kandor to keep history right. What he was trying to prevent was A, a takeover by Brainiac, and B, a takeover by Zod. And neither was he successful at, but his first primary mission was to keep Brainiac from destroying Seg and the family line of El. Meanwhile, Lyda wants to return to Kandor, and Nyssa helps her. Meanwhile, Dev tries to rally the troops. Lyda shows up to help, and they're going to lead the remaining Sagittari in battle. Meanwhile, Jax wants the Codex. Oh, I hate that MacGuffin, the Codex. That's what makes all the Kryptonian babies or whatever. Now, Nyssa goes back for her baby, because I like that. I thought that was really important that they remember that Nyssa's really a mother, and they're not going to, spare that Genesis chamber where all the babies are being incubated, and so she gets the portable incubator, so to speak. And on her way out, she runs into Jax, and she pleads for saving her baby, even though Jax really isn't into that. Zod wants Seg to trade Val for Kandor, and Seg won't do it. Zod wants to make a deal with Brainiac, that if he gives Val to Brainiac, he'll spare Kandor, which, of course, it's only because Val knows so much and stuff. I don't know. It's funny because they do a line that probably surprisingly mirrors Infinity War. I'm sure this wasn't intended because they probably wrote and shot this before it premiered. Infinity War premiered, but where Val has seen millions of possible futures, and in his view, there was no way for them to beat Brainiac. And it's almost the same, of course, as Doctor Strange saying there was 14,605 different outcomes, all of which they lose except for one. Yeah. Lyta prepares for battle, but Brainiac trashes their ships and a bunch of Sagittarii go down. Meanwhile, Dev consoles Lyta on their lost battle. She's mourning her mom, whom she blasted, and it's her own fault. Seg is still evacuating the people. Again, they really haven't given Seg a big heroic moment, I don't think, this season. That's why a lot of people are saying, anyway, that that Seg is sort of like the most underwhelming character. But I think it's just they haven't given him a showcase to spotlight him doing some heroic stuff, and he does get to do something heroic by the end of the episode. Okay, Jax tells Nyssa of her mother's death. Now, of course, Nyssa knew this, but she didn't know the big surprise, the big shocker, is that Nyssa originally died with her mother in some kind of a transportation accident, and she tells her that she's a clone of the original Nyssa with implanted memories and so on and so forth. Traumatic news, to be sure, but to be honest, it's kind of confusing to me, because is this really the original Nyssa if her brain patterns are basically the same as the original Nyssa? In other words, they just transplant her memories into a new brain, or, in a new body, because the other one was expired. Is it really a different person than the original Nyssa? I found that more of a complex issue than just the, oh my gosh, she's a clone. I'm like, well, no, is it really just the original Nyssa in a clone body? Or is this just a completely different soul from Nyssa, but with implanted memories that make her remember that she was Nyssa in her childhood? So, anyhow, we'll just take a second here for station identification. Okay, I had to make sure there was enough water here in the studio because I didn't have my H2O prepared, but I'm sorry for the slight interruption. Okay, so Zod goes after Val to trade for Brainiac, and this was an interesting switch of events, because apparently he did this, and Seg doesn't really try to stop him. Zod is too formidable, he's too fearsome, so he's basically telling Seg to his face that he's going to do this, and Seg really is kind of he backs off. That doesn't mean that he's going to let him get away with this, but he doesn't really try to stop Zod, which I thought was kind of interesting. He doesn't physically try to stop Zod. So Zod meets Brainiac, and Zod kneels before Brainiac. Now that's a switch. Usually it's the other way around, right? Zod's getting everybody to kneel before him. Anyway, Seg then tries to save Val. Kandor begins to get frozen. So everyone around is all frozen. Zod brings Brainiac to the fortress, and Seg threatens to kill Val, which I thought was kind of strange, but whatever. Brainiac force pushes him away. Apparently, Brainiac has the powers of the Force. And I gotta say again that this is a great physical representation of Brainiac. This is the best I think we could possibly see Brainiac in live action. My only disappointment is because on a Sci-Fi Channel budget, we only get him for one episode. And apparently, since there is going to be a season 2, they're going to have to show him more than just once a season. Because literally, we got a video game cutscene of him early on in the show, and then we got this episode. So you're really going to have to up your game a little bit more in the second season. Anyhow, it was all a joke because Val was only a hologram. Seg traps Brainiac in the Phantom Zone, but Seg gets caught with him and gets pulled off into the Phantom Zone because they had the Phantom Zone projector stored up. This was a great cliffhanger ending. This was a classic cliffhanger where, we got rid of Brainiac, but Seg ends up not being able to, just live happily ever after here. He ends up getting sucked into the Phantom Zone too. Something that kind of, threw me for a loop. Anyhow, Superman's cape is restored, and it's kind of confusing at first because it seems like Superman's grandfather getting sucked into the Phantom Zone shouldn't be the catalyst for Superman surviving in the future. But we soon see that Superman's cape is replaced with the Superman emblem on the back, the Kryptonian symbol of L, is replaced with a Zod symbol, and the cape is apparently Zod's now. Zod destroys the Phantom Zone device, so they can't retrieve Seg, and they flash forward a couple of months to the future where Zod is in charge and has taken over all of Krypton, and he is now making everyone kneel before him. See, this is what you call the great payoff. I would have been livid, really, if we didn't have Zod do the kneel before Zod line, or didn't at least have people kneeling before Zod. That's the whole thing about the character. That's what everybody loves about the character. Now, obviously, that is from the Terrence Stamp version, and I was thinking they were just going to try to play it from the comics and say, well, that wasn't necessarily one of the, original tenets of the character, but it's such a great tenet of the character that you have to include it, and they did. It was beautiful. It was just beautiful. And then we see a present day with Adam Strange in an American city, and there's a giant Zod statue there. So apparently Zod has taken over the 24 known galaxies. Is that what it was, 24? I don't know. But and he's taken over Earth as well. And Superman apparently had not been born, and that was what Adam was sent to fix to begin with. So they're going to have a lot of work ahead of them in the second season to try to restore history and have Zod, sent back where he belongs and saving Seg from the Phantom Zone. And of course, we also get the little coda at the end that Doomsday breaks free. He's breaking free from his little cryo tube there that everybody was saying he wasn't going to be restrained in there permanently. So this was a very exciting episode. This one hit all the right notes. Very good episode. And I'm really looking forward to season 2 of this one. This one gets episode of the week for me. 5 stars out of 5 for Krypton, the series. Season 1 now, we can say, because there is going to be season 2. And the actors are all very good on the show, but I think Colin Salmon is the MVP. I think he really is what turned this series midpoint. I really, really like the way he plays Zod. He's very much a military man. He's very much a nationalist. He sees himself as a patriot. And then, of course, he's also a conqueror, which they don't shy away from in the waning moments of the episode. But he plays it very, very well. And I liked the way that they brought Zod into the show when that could have been a very lame gimmick, given that, we've seen Zod so many times during these shows. Smallville had their own Zod, and I think even Supergirl had a Zod, which was probably the weakest Zod of all the incarnations. But again, real great season. We'll try to talk about this a little bit more. I'm going to do a recap of all the shows. We're just going to briefly go over all the seasons and what you thought was the best, what you thought was the worst. And I'll rank them probably. But Krypton really impressed me this season, and I thought it was very good. I'm hoping that they can continue in this level of excellence with the season 2. You never know how a season 2 is going to turn out, but Very impressed with this season. All right, another season finale we had was with The Flash. Flash finally wrapped it up this week with an episode called "We Are the Flash," which, as we've heard all along, that's something that's been sort of their battle cry ever since Iris became sort of the co-Flash of the show. All right, so Captain Singh calls Barry and says that Iris's blog has convinced the mayor that Barry can get his job back. Barry never hears this, I don't think so, but it's sort of just like a throwaway line just to make sure that next season we can have him back as forensic scientist without saying, didn't he get fired last year? I don't know. All right, so the city goes into a blackout. Of course, there's public panic. Cecile goes into labor. They're at the Star Labs, but Caitlin says that Barry can't speed her to a hospital, which I don't know if really is that really an accurate thing? I mean, he goes so fast, would that really hurt anything? Either her or the baby? I don't know. They tried to suggest that it would. So I guess that means every single time that, there's a pregnant woman going into labor, Flash can't rush her to the hospital. I can probably bet you that has happened to the comics before, though. But I guess, I mean, when you think of it, the Flash had put Caitlin and Cisco into the Speed Force, and they were able to like walk as normal, at least temporarily, while he's doing his thing. I kind of thought that maybe he could do the same thing with Cecile, but basically it's a contrivance that Cecile has to be there because they built up these psychic powers that she has, that she's going to somehow be the key to defeating DeVoe. All right, so Mrs. DeVoe shows up with Iris. Maurice, I think is her name. Good actress, really good actress. I enjoyed her this season. She was one of the highlights of the season. I think it'll be fun to see her try to utilize her again in the future, but that's, again, that probably would be kind of contrived, bringing her back into the show. She says that the Thinker planned for every hero Barry might enlist. Now, again, this is something that I always complain about, is when the fanboys moan, why doesn't Barry get Supergirl? Why doesn't Barry get Oliver? Why doesn't Barry get all of the Legends of Tomorrow? Because it ain't the Flash and his amazing friends. This is the Flash show. Just like when you pick up a comic of the Flash, they don't always have guest stars in it to help them out. I mean, because, the Flash could just have the Superman on speed dial, and between the two of them, they should take care of everything. But he's busy doing his own thing in Superman, the comic, and Batman's doing his own thing in Batman, the comic. You really don't have that luxury of always expecting one of the other heroes to be on call. Now, maybe once in a blue moon they will be, but in most cases, they got their hands full with some other problem. Oliver was taking care of Diaz all this time. Supergirl's on another Earth. She's got her own problems with Rain. You can't always expect them to all show up, if you're having a hard time. Because then if that happened, then who would be taking care of these other villains and these other planets? Because you would be going off to help them, too. You would be going to help Supergirl fight Rain. Then where would you be with the Thinker, right? Makes sense to me. I don't know why this is such a big issue. It boggles my mind. It just bugs me when I hear people complain about this. It's just, stop. All right, so Maurice wants to send the Flash into DeVoe's mind to restore the good in him. She thinks that he still has noble sentiments about this, but it just got wildly off track. Cecile acts as a conduit to send Barry into the Thinker's mind. The only problem is she's in labor, and if she gives birth for some reason, her powers will disappear forever. So it's basically the time bomb scenario where she's only got a set amount of time here to keep Barry in DeVoe's mind, because as soon as she delivers, Barry's either going to be stuck there or they'll have to get him out before. So Barry goes to the Thinker's house, and meanwhile, Wells wants to plug in again. He's fading fast. Mentally, he's not all there anymore, and he's just like being dumb now at this point. He's just being stupid, you know what I mean? He hugs Cisco and tells him where Barry needs to go after he put the thinking cap back on, because he needed to do this because nobody else could, and he's already failing fast already. Barry runs into Ralph. It was a nice moment because Barry's, obviously been broken up about losing DeVoe. I mean, losing Ralph to DeVoe when DeVoe took over his body. And let's see. My notes are stuck. DeVoe hunts them as the Thinker. He goes after Team Flash, and they end up vibing into another dimension of through another portal to get to Thinker's headquarters, because apparently there are no other sets on call at the studio there, so they hide out at the Thinker's headquarters. Meanwhile, Ralph becomes the elongated man, and so that's nice. They're in costume together. They fight the DeVoes because DeVoe has multiplied himself exponentially, which is really a really cool scene. The attack of the clones, as Ralph says. They lose until Elongated Man figures that they need to empty their minds and not think, because the Thinker can obviously outthink when somebody is thinking. So they got to do it without thinking. So they fight without thinking. And so, Ralph is thinking of like shrimp cocktails and stuff while he's beating up the DeVoe clones. It was pretty funny. And that's when they were saying this was going to be the funny season. This is kind of what I hoped it would be like. We'd get to see some kind of goofy comic book stuff like this. And they kind of saved it for the end because the rest of it really wasn't all that fun games. But it was worth waiting for. I thought it was an enjoyable finale. DeVoe finds the team. Joe tries to resist, but he slams him against the wall. He's about to kill Cecile, but the Flash shows up and beats him. Ralph regains his body, and Clifford has his mind like programmed into the Thinker chair, but Maurice just shuts it off. So apparently, like, his mental impulses are probably still alive in the chair. If somebody ever turns it on, we might still get a Thinker hologram, which would be pretty cool. So the team goes out there and saves the city from falling debris while Caitlin delivers the baby. And I think they already told us it was going to be a girl, but yeah, it's a girl. The Flash goes to blow up the satellite with a super punch. Neurotic Girl helps, but he doesn't really see her. She just zips in and smashes it with them. Marliese gives them something to restore Harry's mind. She declines joining the team. As I said, it's a full enough headquarters as it is. They really can't afford to have her there too. But Harry's mind comes back after using the device. He comes back quoting Spock, which was beautiful. But he's no longer a genius, which kind of is sad, but I think that was their excuse to let him go for another season. I think the idea is they're going to bring back the prototypical Harry every other season, and they're going to bring in some other version of Wells for Tom Cavanaugh to sink his teeth into every other season, which is this season, which they already said he is going to play another character next season. And so Harry goes back to his own Earth, Earth 2. And I don't know. I mean, he seems okay with this. I don't really know how long this will last. I mean, because they really could use him as another brain. You know what I mean? We really don't need another just of typical intelligence character in the show, But anyway, yeah, I'm gonna give this one 5 stars out of 5. I really enjoyed it. 5 stars out of 5 for the Flash. Oh, and of course the coda at the end, where they're having like a reception there for the baby coming home with Cecile, and Nora is the name of Neurotic Girl finally, and she knocks at the door and is let in. And everybody's like, "Didn't I see you before?" Because she keeps popping up at all these other functions and stuff. But she lets it in. She lets the cat out of the bag that she is Barry and Iris's daughter from the future, and she's wearing a jacket that belonged to Iris, the one-of-a-kind jacket that she used to speed in the one episode where she was a speedster. Apparently, that's where it goes, and of course, it's friction resistant. But anyway, yeah. So yeah, I think it's a good episode, and for a change, they didn't end the Flash feeling depressing and defeated like they did the past 3 seasons. They actually had a cliffhanger, which was positive and upbeat. Last season, Barry goes off into the Speed Force to be by himself. And, the year before that, Barry's father gets killed in front of him. And the year before that, the Singularity kills Ronnie. And Anyway, it's just fun to have a good, happy ending for a change where the guys are celebrating a victory rather than jumping straight into the next defeat. And yeah, this will be interesting to see where they go with this Nora character. You know, I'm not too familiar with the comics, but apparently she's named Cruz. That's her superhero name in the comics, Cruz. And I don't think she's the daughter of Iris in the comics. She's the daughter of Barry and somebody else, I think. But again, I'm not too familiar with the character, but I'm interested in that now to see where they go with that. So, let me know what you think about the Flash season finale. What do you think about this season? We'll be talking about that again, like I said, in the future. But yeah, really good season of, really good episode of The Flash. The season was a little bit weaker, but as of now, I don't know. I think I can remember this season a little more fondly than most of the other shows. Yeah, we'll talk about that later, as I said. All right, we got one final show to take on tonight. This is, I think this is the penultimate episode of Legion this season. And, okay, this episode was a step in the right direction compared to the last episode. Wasn't too bad, but the 3 or 4 episodes before that, it feels like we're finally starting to get somewhere now. It's sad, but this season has just been too dense and far out there, even by this show's standards. It's just been too weird, and I don't see it coming back for another season. They did one of the worst things you can do with a cliffhanger, and they completely minimalized its effects. The first season ended with David going off into the little small robot thing, whatever, getting carried away. Never discussed what happened there. They showed that there was some kind of he was brought to the thing and they danced or whatever, but that was such a boring resolution to that because everybody was thinking it was going to be something pretty cool, and it turned out to be very underwhelming. Then you have like all these lessons that they're trying to show, and this I might as well get to this part now because it really doesn't make no difference where I get to this. But they give a lesson in every episode, which is some kind of like semi-moral, societal lesson, you know. And they're talking about now how you dehumanize people on the internet because you don't see them as people. You just see them as a voice with a funny avatar on the other side. And so then, consequently, because you don't see and are able to react to them in public, they're not human to you, and you can just say and do whatever you want, which leads to, honestly speaking, a lot of people treating like other people like crap on the internet, which is pretty cool. But again, there's a lot of strange things that are bogging down this season. There was at least 3 episodes where I didn't know what the heck was going on or what they had to do with the show, with the ongoing narrative. And because the series can pretty much be distilled down, this season, I should say, can be distilled down to the one plot point, which is Sid from the future tells David that they got to find Faruke's body so that he can help them defeat a greater evil. Now, what that greater evil is kind of indeterminable right now, I guess. There's a couple options of what it could be. They kind of go back and forth not knowing if we can trust Sid from the future. Faruke is trying to find his body before they do pretty much this whole episode. Again, time wasters with Lenny and David's sister and some of the other strange things going on. The guy with the melted face, I always forget his name. Clark, I think his name is. Well, anyway, let's get to the breakdown of this episode. They still can't find Faruke's body. Sid finds out that future Sid and David are on the outs, and she's wondering what that was all about. David doesn't particularly know, I think, if he can trust Sid from the future. The black guy, I forget his name again, wakes up. He sees David Selby and an Asian guy. Woo, for David Selby. Quentin Collins, they got him back for an episode. That was nice to see. Nice to see David Selby. I wish he would get a good role or something. I mean, he was in like 2 episodes last season, wasn't he, before he got killed off? So we get the history of the Asian guy who turns out to be Admiral Fukuhama, I think. And David Selby says that Fukuhama's mind can't be read, and that's why they need him. And he becomes the basket head that we all see in the series. I don't know. The black guy finds the monk that he's like suspended on the ceiling. I don't know. He gets a hold of one of those mustache girl robots and tells David about the monks. Again, kind of just season is just really weird for the sake of being weird. Meanwhile, Oliver asks an old lady about Faruke's body for Faruke. She tells him, and he sends her off to Dreamland, which is, I guess, something that she wanted as a reward. David goes back into the funky pool again for like the 37th time, and he sees Faruke's body. He doesn't know who to tell. He decides to tell Lenny of all people. He goes off by himself for Faruke's body. He leaves a note for Sid. Sid tells her troubles to Clark, I guess the melty face guy, and says that she's going after him. Meanwhile, Melanie is overhearing the conversation. Lenny escapes via motorbike, which I don't get that either, but I don't know. Sid follows David into the desert by parachuting off a plane, and she doesn't take not being told very well, and she beats him up in a pretty funny scene. That was probably the highlight of the whole episode, possibly the whole season. Anyhow, they trek through the desert. In the meantime, Faruke and Oliver are closing in as well. It's a race against time, and they have a rickshaw boy, I guess, pulling them, which is a very strange visual, but that's par for the course. Sid and David run into their future skeletons in a tent, which I have no idea what that meant, but okay. David apparently programmed Clark and Bill Irwin's character, what's his name again? Carrie. He programmed them to do something when he snapped his fingers or something. I don't know. Anyhow, Clark was going to do it, but Melanie knocked him out. That ends up getting rewound or something. I don't know. And apparently there's some kind of weird monster hanging upside down. That was the tag for the next episode. That's it. That's all I got. The coming attractions for next week don't look any better than this. Again, as I said, there was some promise last season. I mean, I wasn't one of the people that were completely blown away by this show, but it kept my interest enough that I was looking forward to seeing it continue. And as I said before, basically, I think this season is going to boil down to 4 episodes. And this is probably one of them. And if they take like 2 of the earlier episodes, this episode, and maybe the climactic episode, just give 4 episodes and that probably is all you need to watch in order to kind of decipher the season. But I'll miss them. I like Sid. I like David, Rachel Heller, and Dan Stevens. They're really good together. That's kind of what makes you want to watch the show, because they're really good together. And a very, when they're together, especially, it feels like an X-Men vibe. But they completely forsaken the X-Men element of the show. We were really excited about maybe Professor X might show up. Maybe they'll talk about him. I think they name dropped. Didn't even name drop him. He just mentions his father, I think, once in passing. And they really don't focus on the fact that his father is Professor X, which is, kind of disappointing. I mean, apparently Patrick Stewart said he'd go on the show if they wanted. And the problem is this, at least this season, has not been that interested in reconnecting to the X-Men roots. That seemed more of last season when he was discovering who he was and whatever. And again, maybe they just can't afford Patrick Stewart, even though he wants to be on the show. Well, if he wanted to be on the show, you think he'd take a pay cut because, of course, the FX network is not going to give him feature motion picture type money. Anyway, yeah, this one was like a little bit of an improvement. So I'll give this one 4 stars out of 5. The last couple of weeks I've been giving it 1 star. That seems like maybe an over approximation, to try to get it back on track. But this episode did kind of feel like it was on track. It did make me feel interested in what was happening. So I'm going to give Legion 4 stars out of 5 for this week. So that is it for another This Week in Comic Book Television. I don't know what that monster is supposed to be. Either that thing looked freaky as heck. The monster hanging upside down. I don't know what that was all about. I guess we'll soon find out. All those monster type things freak me out. I don't know. When you don't know what it is, it's in the dark. That's kind of the way you know you're doing a successfully creepy monster. If you got a good look at it, you'd laugh at it and say it's funny. But when you just see it's dark and you're saying, what is it? Is it upside down? Is that, I don't know. But anyway, freak me out anyway. Anyway, enjoy your Memorial Day weekend, one and all, and I will be with you again on Wednesday for my Solo, a Star Wars story review. We're going to find out exactly how far either Star Wars has fallen or come since The Last Jedi. Make sure you take a look at my website. The link is in the description below for the Adventures of Bullets Bourbon Comics. Also, check out my Twitter page, and you can be updated by all the fun and hilarity that I experience on a daily basis. And let me know what you think in the comments below about any and all of the episodes we reviewed today. I don't know what's on tap for next Saturday's show. I'm sure that Supergirl and Legion are still on. There's not going to be too many more shows to do. So, like I said, if it comes down to just one or two shows, I might just save up until the end of these seasons and give a full recap there. But uh, with two episodes on this week, I'm pretty sure it's safe to say that I'll do another show on Saturday for This Week in Comic Book Television, the only way to spend your Saturday here with us on Johnnie Torch Live. Once again, this is Johnnie Torch reminding you, keep the flame burning brightly, and I'll be with you again real soon.